may recognize Steve Lisberger as the name of the man famous for producing, writing, and directing the movie Tron. But 2 years prior, NBC commissioned Lisberger for a pair of 30-minute animated specials to go along with their coverage of the 1980s Summer Olympics. And thus, Animalympics was born. Ambitiously produced by a small but talented staff that was basically two halves of an animated movie that featured the denizens of the animal kingdom holding their own Olympics. Mirroring the real-world equivalent, the special was split up into both summer and winter games. Although it was said Lisberger developed the project with the intent to combine the two and release it as a feature. Well, he may have gotten his wish, but not in the way he hoped. America was one of the countries that joined the international boycott of the 1980s Moscow Games in protest of the Soviets invading Afghanistan. NBC canceled their Olympic coverage, and only the winter sports half of the special was aired. Yeah, it pretty much sucked for everyone. But I think we can be proud that our country took a stand and said we wouldn't tolerate these malicious acts. I mean, now today all we have are trifles like countries threatening to send their losers to work camps, or the mass censorship of the internet to keep certain nations from looking bad, or just the minor death threat here and there of female athletes. Wait, which one are the animals again? To regroup, Lisberger eventually did re-edit the film into an hour and 20-minute format and showcased it at the 1980s Miami Film Festival, where the reception of it was for the most part very positive. Unfortunately, the only distribution it got was a small overseas release. It was finally featured years later on HBO and Showtime in 1984, and then repeat airings on Disney Channel in the 90s. And by then it was filled with incredibly dated material that about half the target audience of those channels wouldn't get. Seems like crossing the finish line a little too late is a running theme with Animalympics. I know Brad already reviewed this, and he did a great job as usual. Although, to be fair, other reviewers have beaten us both to the punch numerous times. Most recently, the rowdy reviewer over at Trash TV. But that's okay. I think there's plenty to talk about this, because, despite the simple premise, animals performing Olympic sports, this little project has quite a history. And I'm not gonna wait till the freaking Winter Olympics to talk about it. I may not have fancy corporate sponsors, but I got heart. And I say my goal at this point is to get this out before the re-review. Of course, it's not like it's a contest or anything. Isn't that right, Chico? Oh, that's right. Wait, what? What? Oh my gosh, you're right. Look, everyone. It's my pet tortoise, Babs. You know what, Babs? I don't know what surprises me more. That you managed to get inside the house, or that I didn't hear you coming. What with your amazing theme music and all. Besides, I think this could benefit from a different perspective, because unlike my brothers in reviewing, who were kinda meh about the whole thing, and I can freely admit something like this would be polarizing, I just freaking love this movie. I think it's best described in the words of Henry Hummel, the anchor turtle.
For some, the realization of a golden dream. For others, the pits.
But CR, how can you call it a movie? It doesn't even have a plot. As opposed to the regular Olympics? Well, this year it's some sort of James Bond, Johnny English crossover about seducing the Queen Mum to get access to some sort of lunar death ray. Can honestly say I didn't see that coming. This isn't your typical sports movie, which is because this isn't your typical movie. Although they may wander from the format here and there, this film is trying to recreate the experience of a broadcast, which means it moves from short vignette to vignette. Think the blank short films about blank genre.
Bjorn is starring in Cries and Whinnies, Ingmar Bergman's upcoming picture. Can we see the clip?
I remember, as a little boy by the seaside, it was a game and I knew I had won.
Well, Bjorn, that's 2 careers on ice.
So if you're going into this looking for a 3-act structure, you're just not getting the bit. However, I will argue that this movie simulates the movements of a 3-act structure with things other than plot and linear storytelling. Things like tone, pacing, and even artwork. For example, in the beginning, they set up the premise, establish the setting, and introduce all the sportscasters that will guide us through the events, plus the event and 2 characters that will actually serve as the thread to the piece. The marathon race between a goat named Renee Fromage and a lioness named Kit Mumbo.
The way to beat Renee is to take a quick lead and break his concentration.
Wait, what did she say? I'm sorry, something completely broke my concentration.
A classic struggle between superpowers.
Looks like a bunch of dots to me.
You're over the hill, old man.
Who is she kidding?
No wonder this was on HBO. That bird just used profanity. After the start of the marathon, we moved to other sports, like gymnastics.
Tatiana, you began training at an early age. Where I'm from, everyone starts early.
And that would be Russia or LV-426.
Keen, what the crowd is seeing is 150 years of Eurasian ballet tradition.
Wrapped up in a neat little package that could melt Siberia.
I'm sure there's nothing awkward about showering praise on a character who comes from a country that we were supposed to be protesting at the time. Just like there was nothing wrong with that perfect 10 performance. Well, I guess we can even that out with a fail of epic proportions on the uneven bars.
Swing to a handstand. She's getting set for a double flyaway dismount. Now she's got big trouble, Keen. She's losing it. She's got to be disappointed, Keen.
With Stepanitova out of it, a gold medal for Tatiana Tushenko. So, Tatiana's formula, early training from a supportive family, and a government willing to subsidize a potential superstar from birth, yields gold.
Or that she was lucky to go up against an elephant and a hippo. Well, maybe the next event won't be so awkward.
Up next, we got Bruce Kwakimoto, an Asian gymnast who's, well, he's the kind of guy who stands out in any crowd. Anybody see a red pun?
Someone needs to apologize for that.
Me so sorry. Oh, so.
Why don't we check out some winter sports, shall we? Here we see this lovely married couple as they give us their rendition of domestic disturbance on ice.
A great moment for the Kowanoffs. Our congratulations to them.
If I didn't know any better, I'd swear that bird just flipped them the bird. Next event is track and field, where we hear the story of Bolt Jenkins.
He started life as a handbag.
I grew up, the sewer, It was wet, like in dock,
I know he sounds like John Travolta, but he's also got a little bit of Stallone in him. They give him a training montage that falls just short of chasing a chicken. Of course, in this world, something like that might get you in trouble. But I still say they're trying to channel Rocky, right down to the sunken eyes and crappy acting in commercials.
If you want to be the king of the beast and smell like a jungle rat.
All these must be the animal test subjects they used before they made the Turbo Team. Even as a kid, I could recognize there were a lot of different styles of play here. And if someone said that was too distracting, I couldn't really argue with them. But in my opinion, that just adds another level to this film. That's because the relatively small staff of animators have gone on to be considered some of the best in the business. Brad Bird went on to work on The Simpsons, and then direct The Iron Giant, The Incredibles, and Ratatouille. Dan Haskett is one of my favorite artists who's done original designs for Tiny Toons and Animaniacs, and storyboarded for every animation company in the game, TV and feature. John Norton actually went on to work on The Emperor's New Groove, Tarzan, as well as personal favorites of mine, The Chipmunks Adventure, and a Goofy movie. Roger Allard sadly seemed to stop animating soon after this. But that's probably because he was busy coming up with Beauty and the Beast, Aladdin, and then directing The Lion King. And considering that he's the one that animated most of the Kit Mumbo sequences, it would explain the early character designs of Nala. Almost every animator associated with this project went on to develop something that was a huge part of my childhood. Some even went on to do special effects for the Ghostbusters, and storyboard for Harry Potter and even the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And they were able to put as much craftsmanship and care into each scene as they wanted. To this day, I'm blown away by the expressions and movements of some of these characters. I don't laugh at the corny jokes as much as I do the delivery.
4.5. Is that her score or the reading on the Richter scale?
If I didn't know any better, I'd say the Barbara Wobbler scenes were animated by Don Bluth himself. But it was probably just someone that worked really close with him. And it's probably safe to say that Lisberger cut his teeth on a lot of the techniques he would later use in Tron while working on these kick-ass title cards. This movie is like the Olympics for animation. You just kind of need to sit back and watch the people you can't see be amazing at what they do. Now the middle segments have a much faster pace to them, starting out with a couple bobsled runs.
But our Drillinger, you've risked it all in this dangerous sport of bobsledding. What drives these men?
Well, they're all quite bonkers, Keen.
And a soccer match. Okay, which one of these llamas is going to pull us it on? You also get a truly epic hockey match that satisfies our desire for bloodshed.
How long can Coach McLean afford to keep this all-star line off the ice?
Oh no! They got Harry! I'll get them for this.
Wait a minute. That bear sounded French. They sure seem to be socializing awfully close to that medicine. And that's clearly a man in a wig. They're Canadian! Oh, I thought these guys were American. That's bullshit. Where the hell is the United States' sports hero in all of this?
Hey, I'm high on life, man. The West is the best. It's all here, for sure.
Oh, totes, like for sure. Well, if this guy is anything like our country's star swimmer, kelp isn't the only greens in those tacos.
For sure.
But tension is still introduced in the film when one of the star skiing contestants goes missing during a snowstorm, only to find that he's stumbled across some sort of Shangri-La for dogs. And over the course of the film, we've been checking in on Renee and Kit, who have somehow developed the ability to communicate through thought. And by the way, they've been running this whole time. Yeah, this is like day 7. It's like if H.G. Wells collaborated with Stephen King and 1982 Stephen King.
Ha! I get it.
Oh yeah, and a little bit of Stephanie Meyer, because despite knowing nothing about each other than they run well, they seem to be falling in love with each other. And Renee starts to question what's important in life. One thing that almost everyone remembers this movie for is the original soundtrack. All the original music was written and performed by Graham Goldman, writer and bassist for 10cc, a popular British band at the time. Fun fact, before Goldman formed his band, he worked for several producers on bubblegum pop, songs that may not have much longevity but are so catchy that they're everywhere before they burn out. The reason why everyone remembers this for the music is because this man's specialty is engineering earworms. I dare you not to get pumped while listening to the ironically named Born to Lose. He also wrote the Animalympics theme and the Kit Mumbo Marathon theme. His awesome soundtrack might seem a little tame compared to modern standards, but it's catchy enough that it adds a lot of flavor to the production and keeps the pace going. Although 10cc was involved with recording several tracks, the soundtrack was considered a solo project and was released on vinyl. Of course, since Animalympics only saw a limited theatrical release, most people didn't even know an album existed. Just another tragedy that came out of the 1980s Olympic year. Oh yeah, and all those athletes that put years of training into their dreams, who could only hope to qualify for next time. Oh yeah, that's right, and there was a war, too. During what you could call the third act, or climax, the tone of the film changes. We see a lot of training montages, but unlike the one that introduced Bolt Jenkins, which was very inspirational, these seem to be more dramatic. One is set to a very intense techno track, and the other one has no music at all.
Up and down on the hardwood floors, didn't eat no meat. It lays in your stomach, makes you fat and lazy and heavy. Every time my career, you're on my back. I trained hard for this Busbeckel. I can't even pronounce his name. That's why I'm gonna whip him so bad, he's gonna look like his last name sounds.
We are also introduced to several events, like the boxing match, only to revisit them after seeing another event. This is a pattern of setup, wait, and payoff that we don't see in any of the earlier segments.
Janos, you lost miserably. You let down your coach. You let down your country. You let down your mother. You're a bum steer. But most importantly, you let down yourself. And now you can let me down.
Monster University looks depressing. Billy Crystal is the turkey. He also did a lot of voices for this. Also, scenes at this end of the film are staged differently compared to the others, isolating characters with heavy shadows or fields of white, creating a more dramatic effect. Oh yeah, and that skier shows up again, only to take off right after the event. So, thanks for that plot cul-de-sac. Also, we've been checking on the marathon more frequently than before.
They speak of the world of physical exhaustion, but it is papier-mâché compared to the barrier that keeps me from kid. It's the only way, my love. Soon we'll be together. I'll run forever if we can run together. I can never run again without you.
You know, the hopeless romantic in me likes the poetry of two people falling in love over the course of an epically long race. But on the other hand, why would anyone just suddenly abandon... maybe we should switch to some Winter Olympics.
Looks like North America's gonna have to wait a little longer for a gold medal.
Okay, I think it's about time I address the elephant in the room. Not that elephant. That elephant.
Hey, get your eyes off my sister!
In 2001, some guy who likes to smell his own farts wrote an article in Vanity Fair about furries. Or rather, one guy who openly admitted to experiments with bestiality and claimed that it was a way of life and religion. Overnight, the term furry became synonymous with sexual depravity, just as D&D was with Satan worship. This, of course, put a permanent tent on any piece of medium that featured talking animals, characters with animal characteristics, and anyone that liked or created it. Which sucks, since a good portion of our entertainment is saturated with these kind of characters. So whenever something like this does pop up, someone's always got to start a conversation about whether or not the people making it were deviants. I mean, why else would they be making animals all sexy? I don't know. Maybe it's because they were trying to tell a story. Try and backtrack this all you want, and you'll find out that it goes further than anyone ever thought. That's because humans have always had a natural fascination with animals. So they've always been a good subject matter. Aesop used animals in his fables because it's easier to humanize animals than humans. Or rather, it takes more time to flesh out human characters than to just play with the ideas already associated with animals. Sly as a fox, slow as a turtle, fat as a pig, wise as an owl, etc., etc. The great animator Chuck Jones, when he was very young, read Mark Twain's Roughing It, which features a fantastic description of a coyote, and after a little research, the would-be director was delighted to find that he, age 8, and an average coyote was roughly the same height. Chuck Jones found his soulmate among the animal kingdom that day, and later on he was able to mix the coyote's ineptitude at catching food, coyotes are mostly scavengers, with his own ineptitude at being a handyman. Chuck Jones was known for breaking windows and thumbs alike while trying to hang a simple picture frame, to create an hilarious and iconic character. And you can see the same exact process here. We need a character that represents rising from the dredges to be an Olympic champion. Well, you can't get any lower than the sewers of New York. And what kind of animal lives in the New York sewers? Well, supposedly alligators. Given the backstory of Rocky and the mannerisms of John Travolta, and you've got Bolt Jenkins. We need an ice skater. Something graceful. Okay, how about a swan? Little overdone. How about something that'll pop against a lot of white? Well, flamingos are pretty graceful too. Perfect. Okay, but that still doesn't explain cat butt and bitch tits. Or does it? In the early days, female characters were nearly identical to their male counterparts, save for a bow or skirt. But as storytelling progressed and evolved, artists began to realize that if these characters are supposed to be analogs for ourselves, then would it have a greater impact if we gave them the traits of what we found attractive? Better A or better B? And this movie is the best example of each principle of character design. Identifiable, accessible, and appealing. The average time spent with each character in this movie has got to be less than half a minute. So when you're constantly introducing new characters, you have to find the most effective way to convey characteristics within seconds. Also, like with the story with Renee and Kit, they want you to believe that Renee would fall so head over heels that he would put aside his obsession just to run with her. They accomplish this visually by giving her a really... I know I was going to say something, but my mind's a complete blank now. Who am I? In the end, furries are just another product of playing with the conventions of storytelling. Artists can use them to tell compelling stories with striking characters that seem otherworldly yet familiar. Or they can slap big old fun bags on a panther or a cat mask on a golden-voiced giant and cash a paycheck. And wondering why certain people are drawn to this is like wondering why people like robots or elves or aliens or vampires. It's just a matter of preference. They could have easily used any other subject and combined it with the Olympic theme, but they came up with this idea and realized that there were a lot of things to play with here. Besides, everyone knows furries aren't worth hating. Not while those damn continenties are around. Godless freaks. 8 minutes from the credits, we get the fencing event, which features a boar fighting dirty against a much weaker opponent to win.
You stupid rodent! No one beats me!
While competitors before this have looked menacing as a means to intimidate, this is the first character introduced with overtly villainous tendencies. And so we get our first true hero of the movie.
You could kiss her! You'll never fence again!
You've never fenced before!
Oh no, she didn't!
It's the movie's way of saying, here's a little nugget of instant gratification. And there is totally a reason this is the last thing we see before the finale of the marathon. Even though these events are separate, juxtaposed, it gives a feeling of overcoming and living happily ever after, with our final song with Renee and Kit. Or a shared heat stroke from running a 2-week race, I'm not sure. You know, I like the fact that one of the goals of the Olympics is to bring countries together, but when people actually start to show affection, everyone loses their shit.
I can't believe these great athletes who have trained years for this would sacrifice it all for one. This is not a war! They're crossing the finish line together!
Well, the crowd doesn't seem to mind. And as the two run off into the sunset, we say goodbye to Animalympics with a look at the animals behind the scenes.
Our tape editor, Gary Mazars. Tight Gary.
He called him a tight beaver. And that's the end of Animalympics. And I loved every minute of it. Oh, sure, it's dated and incredibly corny at times, but it's just such a unique project with an interesting history and just an undeniable sincerity about it. And it doesn't matter if you don't get all the references, because as this proves, great animation will keep you coming back until you're ready for the joke. And I will say right now that anyone interested in a career in animation, this is an absolute must-watch. Because as I said before, a lot of the top talent from the last 3 decades of animation had a hand in it. Well, that's all I have to say about Animalympics. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to help a friend train for the upcoming games. As your coach, I feel the need to address a few problem areas. First, skateboarding is kind of an X Games event, and that's not how you grind.